It's Black History Month, and every year for Black History Month, DJ School UK, along with Leeds' Hip Hop Community, does a day of celebrations at the Leeds Museum for what we call the birthday of hip hop. This year, because of coronavirus, we can't do it in person, and I've got the job of making a video. The main aim of what I'm going to show you is to say how the original techniques of hip hop started and how they can still be applied today to make new, interesting music out of anything. The easiest way I know to explain the origins of hip hop DJing is to explain how a certain DJ routine was made. Now, I can't do this whole mix on real vinyl as I don't have all the vinyl, and I don't have time to do the whole mix, so I'm only going to explain the first few minutes. In the description to this video is another link to a YouTube video where a guy called Johnny M recreates this whole mix on 2 vinyl turntables using only the original vinyl. So if you want to see it done in all its glory, have a look down there. All I'm going to say is I hope you enjoy learning something about the history of hip hop DJing, and hopefully maybe you get inspired to try it out yourself. So back in the day, there was parties going on at a place called Cedric Avenue, and a DJ called Cool Herc had learned that people went absolutely crazy for certain parts of songs, and he started to mix. Another guy called Africa Bambata and a guy called Grandmaster Flash developed these techniques to start hip hop DJing. Grandmaster Flash is the one I'm going to focus on today. Grandmaster Flash released a single called The Adventures of Grandmaster Flash on the Wheels of Steel in 1981. It's a live DJ mix recording of Flash scratching and mixing records from various different bands and recordings using 3 turntables. This single was hugely influential on many DJs, including rapper Dr. Dre. It was an early example of what would eventually be called turntablism. It's also the first documented appearance of record scratching on a record. It was the first DJ set which was pressed to vinyl, and it stands alone, as far as most people are concerned, as a song in its own right. It's definitely a great example of how a DJ can make music. Okay, so here we are at the turntables. As I've already said, I'm not going to be able to do this on real vinyl because I don't have all the original vinyl, but what I do have is a digital vinyl system where I can use time-coded vinyl records to control digital files on a laptop. So I'm pretty much going to show you the basic things that Grandmaster Flash had to do with his vinyl, but it's going to be a little bit easier for me. I'm going to explain as I go which bits are easier for me, so that you understand just how hard it was for him and for those original hip hop DJs to invent this style of making music. Now, the first thing you need to know is when we're using a vinyl record, the music is actually imprinted into the plastic as tiny little bumps, and it's read by this tiny little needle, which is also called a stylus. When the tiny little needle at the end of the tone arm here hits the bumps in the groove of the record, that's what makes the sound. It might sound far-fetched to kids these days who are used to digital technology, but literally that's how it works. So the first thing you need to understand is just how delicate this is. Because the needle's tiny and because the bumps are tiny, if I put the needle down too heavy or if I scrape it across, I could damage that vinyl forever. And if this is the only copy of a certain song that I have, then that means that I have killed the only copy and I'll never be able to do the mix again. So when these DJs were doing these mixes, they had to be careful. Even if they looked quick and even if they looked like they'd been a bit haphazard with it, they were actually being super careful and they'd practiced being careful. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to gently put the needle on at the beginning of this record, and you don't hear a thing because I put it down so gently. If I put it down too heavily, it would have gone thunk, and that would have been beginning to damage it. I don't want to damage it, I want to look after it. Now I press start, and the disc starts spinning. I'm holding onto the record on what's called a slip mat. You can see the slip mat on this side, so that the record can be held while the platter underneath is spinning. And when I'm ready, I'm going to let go. And we hear nothing, because this is a real vinyl record. It doesn't play when you press play. You have to wait until the needle finds the bumps that say the music's starting. So I've just got to leave it. And then when I hear the first sound, I can hold on to it, and I can line up with my eye using this little sticker exactly where that first sound starts, and then I can start the music in time. 1, 2, 3, 4, go.
You see, one for the trouble.
So it's not as easy as just pressing play. Already with vinyl, you've got to put the needle on, find the music, and cue it up, we call it. And we use these stickers, we call it clock technique. Now, the sample I actually want is here. Because I'm using Grandmaster Flash's Adventures of the Wheels of Steel as this track that I'm going to use to show you how he made it, but that's only because I don't have the first record, which is Spoonie G's Monster Jam. What I have is Grandmaster Flash's record, so I can recreate it by using the sample of Spoonie G's Monster Jam to show you what Flash did. And to do that, I need to have the actual beginning of the song.
You see, one for the trouble. You see.
And I've lined it up now, I've cued it up using the clock technique, using my sticker. I know that the sample I want is when the clock is pointing at, I'm going to call that 6:30. Doesn't matter what you call it, as long as you can recognise exactly where it is. So if I turn this off by closing the crossfader, I know I'm going to hear it there.
You see.
Which brings me straight to the first technique, the first proper DJing technique, hip hop DJing technique that Flash used. And this is the forward scratch. What I do is I line up the sample that I want, and then if I have the crossfader over here, and I can hear it forward and backward. If I have the crossfader over here, we'd hear that side, but we don't hear this side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the crossfader to play the sample, and then I'm going to shut it while I rewind the sample to just the right point using my clock technique, and I'm going to play it again. And this is how Flash began his mix. It's called the forward scratch, and he did it just so that people maybe knew you weren't just listening to Spoonie G's Monster Jam, you were listening to Flash cutting up Spoonie G's Monster Jam. You know the second you hear that sound that there was a DJ and that it wasn't just a track being played. So let's do that forward scratch once more, and I'll show you just how much of Monster Jam got played.
You see, one for the trouble, two for the time. Come on, girls, let's rock that.
That's it. That's all he played. At that point, he had another record ready over here, and that's what I better do now, get this next record ready. So the next technique that Flash used was a cut mix. He'd sampled Spoonie G's Monster Jam and used the forward cut to scratch it in, and then he wanted to cut straight to Blondie's Rapture, but not just anywhere in Blondie's Rapture. He had to find exactly the right sample that he wanted. Now this is where the digital system helps me out. Flash would have had to find the sample and prepare it so that the needle was bang on it. With a digital system, I can press a button and go straight to it. Which is very quick and very, very easy. But remember how I put the needle on here and had to fast forward and find the sound and then look at my clock technique? If I was living in Flash's days with the original vinyl, I would have had to do that too, just to prepare this cue point. Digital system is a lot quicker, so I can cheat a little bit. To be fair, in my defence, Flash did actually do this with 3 turntables. So he had Monster Jam, Blondie, and a third record ready lined up. We'll come to that third record in a minute. I can cheat using cue points. Flash used 3 decks. You know, it's 2020. I'm using DVS. Even though I've used a button to jump to this cue point, I still need to use my clock technique. I need to know exactly where that sample is. My sticker's looking at about 11. So I've now got Monster Jam.
You see, one for the trouble, 2 for the time. Come on, girls, let's rock that.
5:30 told me everybody's side. DJ spinning, I said, my Flash is bad.
Now that's ready because at the end of this part I'm going to play that again. But when it gets to Flash's fast, Flash also did a couple of forward scratches on Blondie.
Flash is bad. Flash is bad. Flash is fast, Flash is cool, Francois, c'est pas, Flash ain't no dude.
You say one for the trouble, two for the time. Come on, girls, let's rock that.
At that point, he jumps to his third deck and plays a song called Good Times by Chic, again queued up in the right place. So all this time of setting up his cue points, he would have probably done before he even started his mix. As I say, I'm using digital buttons. He had 3 decks to make it a little bit easier for him. One thing to explain, some people who've seen a program on Netflix called The Get Down may have noticed that to find a cue point quickly, Flash used a bit of crayon, and he drew crayon across the groove right to where he wanted the needle. Other DJs put a little sticker on so that when they drop the needle on, the sticker forces the needle right to the right point of the groove. Both techniques work, both techniques slightly damage the vinyl. The sticker one is really damaging because it means you can't play the part of music before the sticker, because when the needle gets to it, the needle jumps off. So, where are we up to? We've got Monster Jam, Blondie, Monster Jam again. We need to go to Good Times. So I'm going to do this intro mix now from the beginning, see if we can get it right. Bear with me while I just prepare this. That's how I queue up, and when I want to get to Good Times over here, you'll see me queue up again.
You see one for the trouble, two for the time. Come on, girls, let's rock that.
5-5 Freddy told me everybody slide. DJ spinning, I said my Flash is back, Flash is back, Flash is fast, Flash is cool, Francois, c'est pas, Flash ain't no dude.
You say one for the trouble, two for the time. Come on, girls, let's rock that.
Now at this point, he had to change record. I don't, because I've got cue points. Here's where he would bring in a tune called Apache by the Incredible Bongo Band, and he'd bring it in with a baby scratch. He'd then put a second copy of Apache on this side. And once he was playing the second copy, he could rewind the first copy and play it again. This is probably the most important thing, I think, that hip hop DJs discovered how to do. It's called looping, and it's looping the break. Now I'm doing it for longer than Flash because I want you to understand what's going on. I'm making the drum break infinitely long. What this meant back in the day was the dancers who liked this bit best could dance forever. Last time. Now you change record again. Get ready for another cut with forward scratches. This one's Queen's Another One Bites the Dust. And then he went back to Good Times. Now that's as much of the mix as I really want to show you today, but you need to understand something really, really, really important here. By using Monster Jam, Blondie, Monster Jam, and then using Apache as a loop, dropping into Queen, and then specifically using Good Times again, he effectively built up the structure of a song. And Good Times, if you like, is the chorus to that song. The other elements are building up the verses, using those elements to make lyrics and to use the melodies to make the music. And then Good Times drops each time as the chorus. So in his routine, in his mix, he made a song. He didn't just do a DJ mix. He considered it a new piece of music. And that's why he released it as the first single. The other thing, apart from looping breaks that hip hop DJs did that I didn't get into because I was too busy doing it, was of course scratching, which is the sound these days. I think most people think when they think of the sound a DJ makes as an instrument, they think of scratching. And I did it like that. Basically rubbing the sound backwards and forwards and using the crossfader to turn it on and off. So you're combining what's called the baby scratch, one hand forward backwards, with the forward scratch. So you only hear the forwards. And there are a million variations of the combinations between crossfader and sound, which I don't want to go into here because this is just an introduction to what they were doing in those days. What I do want you to understand as part of the history lesson is that this scratching was invented by a chap called Grand Wizard Theodore, because all DJs were doing this. That's how they counted the music in. But the secret is they all did it in headphones because they didn't think the audience wanted to hear this bit. What they did was they didn't want the audience to hear the scratching bit. They did that in headphones for themselves to make sure they were in the right place and make sure their cue point was correct. What Grand Wizard Theodore did was so the legend goes, left his fader open when he was doing it, and apparently it was so noisy he didn't realise. So the audience heard that sound for the first ever time, and according to the legend, they went crazy. And he instantly went, right, well, I'm going to keep doing that when I'm bringing my stracks in. So that was how scratching was invented. So I've already mentioned that I can't do this the real way and that I need a digital vinyl system to recreate this mix because I don't have the real vinyl. We're DJ School UK and we want DJing to become as accessible as possible for young people. So I'm going to explain now that each one of these to buy nowadays would be about 500 quid. This is 1,500, this is 500. So we've got £3,000 worth of equipment here for me to recreate this nearly the way Flash did without even having the proper vinyl. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to use a piece of equipment that costs £200 that you plug into a computer, which is a DJ controller. Let's just see if I can pick this up and show you one. I've got one over here. Much cheaper, still able to use the platter for scratching. I can use the cue points to find out places in songs where I want to go. And it attaches to a computer. You don't need a Mac, you can use a PC. But the point of me showing you this is that you can understand you don't need £3,000 to do this mix. You don't need to use these old school hip hop tracks to do this mix. You can use these techniques and the inspiration that led Flash to discover this mix to create something completely new yourself. We want you to understand how accessible this is and how these techniques can be applied to make something new using tracks you like now. Okay, let me just set up the mix track and we'll have a go at it. So what you're looking at here is a Newmark Mix Track Pro 3. A really reliable, tried and tested piece of equipment we use a lot down at DJ School UK. Retailing at about £230, £240 at the moment with full Pro software. We use Serato DJ Pro software. If you look up in the top right of the screen, you'll see a picture-in-picture which shows you what the software is doing, and hopefully you can see my mouse flicking about because I'm going to point out certain things like I can fast forward in. This white triangle shows you where I am in the song, and I can jump around, I can fast forward. Most important of all, I can use the cue points that I've preset to jump to the coloured triangles on the bottom. I've only got 4 cue points, which doesn't quite give me enough for this mix, but I can use the mouse on screen for the 5th. So in total I can do this mix. What's even more important than that is that this controller has good platters. So I can scratch, I can loop, I can do the techniques that the original hip hop DJs did. And the point of all this is to prove to you that you don't need to spend £3,000 on a big expensive vinyl setup and collect all the vinyl. You can go out and get yourself something a lot cheaper. If you've got a computer and you're really thinking, I haven't got 240 quid, on eBay, you can get Newmark Mix Track Pro 1s for about 50 quid at the moment. And you can get Serato DJ Lite software, which is completely free and always will be. And you can't get more accessible than that. It's cheaper than a PS5, it's cheaper than the Xbox, it's cheaper than anything else, but this is pure creativity and it should last you for life. even if you're just dipping your toe, try out some new sounds, try out some songs you love that are current. Forget all this old hip hop stuff, forget all this old funk and disco that people were playing back in the 70s. Do something modern, use the same techniques with new songs, piece them together, loop them, scratch them, develop something so that you make the next big hip hop track. It's possible, it's accessible, that's what we're all about. What I'm going to try and do, just to finish this little video off, is try and recreate Flash's mix using just this piece of equipment. It shouldn't be too difficult. The only trick I've got is making sure that I've got everything recording so I can piece it together afterwards, because I'm not very good at video editing.
You see, one for the trouble, two for the time. Come on, girls, let's rock that.
5 Freddy told me everybody's fly. DJ spinning, I said in my mind. Flash is fast, Flash is fast, Flash is fast, Flash is cool. Francois, c'est pas Flash ain't no do.
You say one for the trouble, two for the time. Come on, girls, let's rock that.
I'm going to loop this a couple extra times so you can see that I am actually looping it. I like looping, that's why I did that. You can freestyle with a bit of looping, you can improvise. And there we have it. I said that big word there, improvise. Improvising's so important. Maybe you don't do it in a performance. Flash would maybe not have improvised when he was doing this live, but improvisation when you're practicing, when you're messing about, when you're experimenting, that's what helps you discover new things. That's what helps you experiment. And you know, if it wasn't for that, maybe they would have never learnt scratching. Maybe they would have never discovered the break. So what more can I say? The essence of hip hop DJing, built around wanting to make people party, built around making it accessible, built around using what you could get your hands on, and built around being creative.